Chapter 793, Nantua Kingdom. The Jinfeng was tightly surrounded by hundreds of ships, leaving no space in front, behind, or on the left and right. They didn't even have a way to retreat. These ships were large and small, including large Coast Guard ships and civilian fishing boats. The people on them were dressed in all kinds of clothes, from all walks of life. After surrounding the Jinfeng, two small brown-skinned men wearing thick cotton clothes walked out of a Coast Guard ship, holding an AK in one hand and a loudspeaker in the other hand to shout at the ship. Lao Tian was not in a hurry. He put on a bulletproof vest, asked the sailors to take rifles and explosion-proof shields and go to the deck, and began to communicate with those people in the local dialect. The people on the ship will dock immediately. We want to board the ship for inspection. A group of people holding weapons and looking like a military organization shouted. Lao Tian was not afraid. We are the ship of the Chaoyu organization of Tianhai City. You quickly get out of the way. The Chaoyu organization used to crisscross the sea and was also a bit famous. This situation is not the first time he has seen it. These small countries in the southern seas have been completely chaotic after the end of the world, and all the people are bandits. As long as you pass through their waters, you'll be stopped. The lightest thing is to rob everything on the ship. Yes, everything. Ships, supplies, and even people. The strong men are left as slaves, the thin ones are slaughtered as rations, and the women are kept for them to play. So, at this time, it is just a luxury to think that you can make peace with them. Lao Tian wants to scare them in the name of the Chaoyu organization, and it would be best if they would give up. But this place is too far away from Huaxi country, and this group of ignorant bandits don't take the Chaoyu base seriously at all. A bandit opened fire directly and shot at the ship. AK bullets crackled on the hull. Lao Tian was angry, and after cursing a swear word, he picked up his weapon and shot at the people below. The weapons and equipment in their hands were all equipped by Zhang Yi, with strong firepower and sufficient bullets. In addition to ordinary rifles, there are also Gatling guns and various rocket launchers. These sailors are not just crew members. They used to be the elite in the Tianhai Navy. Those who can survive to this day are all extremely powerful. They were not powerful enough to fight against aliens, but they could beat the gangs of these small countries. The weapons of these gang members were much simpler, and some even came with kitchen knives and spears. Lao Tian and his men fired bullets freely. This was what Zhang Yi told them, and there was no need to save on weapons. Anyway, they were all taken from the arsenal of the Jiangnan region. For a moment, more than a dozen sailors on the Jinfeng opened fire. Lao Tian personally came to the bow and opened the deck. Immediately, a Gatling gun was turned out. There was a heavy metal baffle in front, and the huge muzzle had more than a dozen barrels. Lao Tian roared and started shooting at dozens of small boats in front. Da-da-da-da-da. The gunshots sounded like the hissing of a rattlesnake, and blue flames jumped at the muzzle. In an instant, large-caliber bullets carrying huge kinetic energy shot at those ships and gangs. For a moment, the broken flesh and blood and the hull were blown away directly. Both the people and the boats were like paper and could not withstand such a powerful destructive force. The ocean soon turned blood red, and the gangsters screamed and wailed, and fled in a hurry. Lao Tian did not pursue them further. He took out a cigarette from his pocket, lit it on the red-hot gun barrel, and then ordered, "Hurry up and set off." The icebreaker crushed the broken ships and the bodies of the gangsters and continued to move forward into the distance. The reason for leaving quickly was that, according to convention, they killed the gangsters, and the gangsters would definitely not give up. For safety reasons, Lao Tian went to Zhang Yi to report. "It may be a bit troublesome, and I have to ask you to help." Zhang Yi said lightly, "It doesn't matter. Wait until they show up." As Lao Tian said, less than half an hour after they moved forward, deafening artillery sounds suddenly rang out on the shore. More than a dozen coastal defense guns aimed at the Jinfeng and began to bombard it fiercely. But when those shells approached the Jinfeng, they did not damage the hull, but were directly swallowed into the alien space. The road ahead was also blocked by two old warships. Zhang Yi appeared at the bow, and without saying much nonsense, He directly used full counterattack to counterattack the absorbed shells. Boom! On the coast, all the old-fashioned coastal defense guns were blown up, and the gangs operating the cannons were blown to pieces. The gangs shouted in horror. They are not civilian ships. They are warships. Warships. They mistakenly thought that there were cannons on the Jinfeng. The two warships blocking the sea also began a fierce artillery attack. Although they were old-fashioned ships, the power of the ship's main guns was still very terrifying. Aiming at the bow of the Jinfeng, they launched a fierce bombardment. Zhang Yi's eyes showed a mocking look, and a ray of anger gradually spread. The alien space absorbed all the attacks of the shells, and then returned them intact. Boom. 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 Those warships were bombarded by their own shells and were soon blown to pieces. But this attack was not enough to destroy the sturdy warships. This method of destroying the enemy was too slow. Zhang Yi was furious. He was sailing well, and someone dared to rob him? He pulled out the Holy Judgment and came directly to the sky above a warship in a few flashes in the air. As soon as he got on the ship, he saw the short brown monkeys on it, holding AKs and rocket launchers in their hands, looking at him with horror or astonishment, cursing the local swear words. Puff! Zhang Yi swung his knife directly and cut 7 or 8 pirates in half at once. The pirates behind him were frightened by Zhang Yi's methods and frantically pulled the trigger to kill Zhang Yi. But their bullets fell into Zhang Yi's body like a drop in the ocean, without any reaction. Zhang Yi backhanded a knife and sent them all to the west. We must kill all these pirates. Zhang Yi quickly made a decision in his heart. Because he has to pass through the sea area when he comes back. If he lets them go now, he will definitely be retaliated. He will not leave trouble for himself, and it is safest to cut the grass and eradicate it. Zhang Yi carried a knife and killed from the bow to the stern, and from the deck into the cabin. In the past, every time he faced an opponent, he was an alien, so the battle was not particularly easy. But most of these pirates are muggles, and even if they're aliens, they are only low-level. Wherever he passed with a knife, it was like cutting melons and vegetables. He had no guilt in his heart for killing these pirates. Because after entering the cabin, he could see people who were skinned and hung everywhere, and some of them were cut to only bones. This group of pirates has completely lost their humanity. Chapter 790 for all non-humans, Add 2. Kill, kill, kill. Zhang Yi showed no mercy to the pirates and killed everyone he saw. He cleaned up the rooms one by one. He would not leave any of the pirates here alive today. The pirates were terrified and tried to resist, but they could not even touch a hair of Zhang Yi, and they were all chopped into pieces. Bang! Zhang Yi chopped a door with a knife, then kicked it open and walked in. The room was dark, the air was filled with an extremely unpleasant smell, and the floor was covered with excrement. He saw 5 or 6 women chained in the corner, each of them covered in mud and dirt, and their eyes had long lost their light. Zhang Yi frowned, cut off the chains on them, and then planned to turn around and leave. Whether they can survive next depends on their own luck. But just as he was about to step out of the door, a new idea emerged in his mind. He turned around, adjusted the intelligent voice system to the local language, and said to the women, "Do you know where the nest of those bastards is?" The women watched the chains that bound them being cut off, and they just huddled together in fear, looking at Zhang Yi numbly, but did not answer him. Zhang Yi continued to ask, "I am here to help you kill those scum. If you tell me where they are, I can help you get revenge." Zhang Yi thought about it, took out 2 large bags of bread from the alien space, and put them on the ground. "And these foods can also be given to you." After seeing the food, the eyes of several women suddenly showed a look of desire, and they rushed over in a hurry. They didn't care who Zhang Yi was, and started to bite and fight for the bread like crazy. Zhang Yi took 2 steps back to prevent the stains on their bodies from getting on his clothes. After all, they were covered with feces. I said, "Where's their nest, do you know?" A woman raised her head curiously, looking at Zhang Yi while eating bread. She smiled foolishly. "There is no nest, no nest. Everyone has become a ghost, and they are not good people." This sentence made Zhang Yi completely understand the situation of this small country. The country is small and has few people, and supplies are scarce. After the end of the world, everyone has gone crazy. Either they are eaten or they eat others. There is no living person on the island who is not a member of the pirate gang. So, do you know where the largest group is? Zhang Yi asked patiently. The woman's eyes rolled up, and it can be seen that her mental state has long been abnormal. After thinking for a long time, she smiled and said, General Baocha has the most people. The whole island is under his control. Thank you, I see. Zhang Yi left the ship and boarded another ship to carry out the same cleaning. In the communicator, Zhu Yang's voice came, Mr. Zhang, let's go quickly after cleaning up this group of pirates. There is no need to slaughter them wantonly, otherwise it will be easy for others to use this as a handle to attack us. Lao Tian's voice was on another channel. Mr. Zhang, what should we do next? Zhou Ke also asked Zhang Yi about the situation outside. Zhang Yi opened the public channel and pulled them all in. All the pirates on the island must be cleared. Otherwise, they will become a problem when we return. Zhu Yang suddenly became anxious. Zhang Yi, if you do this, it is likely to cause international disputes. Zhang Yi said coldly, when they attacked our ship, they were already sentenced to death. Also, Miss Zhu Yang, let me remind you that this is the end of the world. Zhu Yang said calmly, Zhang Yi, now I know you are very excited, but don't get excited first. We are carrying out a secret mission this time. It is not suitable to be too high-profile. Now that the pirates who blocked the road have been killed, can't we leave as soon as possible? Zhang Yi was determined to kill. You think too simply. If we deliberately forbear, it will appear abnormal. The more you try to cover up, the more obvious it is. Ain't it reasonable for an ocean-going icebreaker to have masters on board? Being intercepted by pirates, counter-killing is also a normal means. The more they remain silent, the more people will suspect that there is something fishy. Zhang Yi ignored Zhu Yang's advice and gave an order to Lao Tian. You stay on the boat, take your weapons, and be ready to fight. If you see anyone holding a weapon, just open fire and kill them. There is no need to judge their identity. There are no good people alive on this island. After saying that, Zhang Yi held the holy judgment in his hand, and with a few flashes in the air, he arrived on the island of Manhwa Kingdom. From a distance, he saw someone spying in the dark. Obviously, those people were shocked by his methods and dared not to make a move, but to monitor Zhang Yi here. I'm afraid it won't be long before General Baocha's people will come. Zhang Yi took out an ordinary desert eagle, fired a few bursts, and shot all the spies from thousands of meters away. It is very simple to find General Baocha's base camp. Because the island is covered with snow, you only need to follow. Just look for traces of people and cars. Zhang Yi doesn't need to use the origin bullet, nor does he need to judge whether the people on the island are pirates or civilians. Since the Gene phone was attacked, and he saw the imprisoned women on the ship, he decided to wipe out the island. Gunshots rang out on the island. Dozens of gang members with guns rushed out from the snowfield, cursing loudly, and then fired wildly at Zhang Yi. Well, it saves my bullets. Zhang Yi opened his right hand, and all the bullets shot at him were collected in the alien space. The next moment, they all returned to the original path like a rainstorm. Puff, 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 puff. The bullets penetrated their bodies covered only by cotton clothes and shot them into sieves. Someone else took out a rocket launcher, thinking that the rifle was not powerful enough. As a result, the rocket flew back the same way it went. 7 or 8 people were blown away on the spot, and the fragments were scattered all over the ground. The noise became louder and louder. The population of the small country of Manhwa itself is only a few million. After the end of the world, there are only more than 10,000 survivors. All the people are bandits, specializing in robbing ships. On weekdays, they don't have much chance to come into contact with high-level aliens. Several aliens in the gang are regarded as gods by them. Therefore, this time, they were completely shocked by Zhang Yi's ability. Some gang members were so scared that they peed their pants, knelt on the ground, and kowtowed desperately for mercy. Zhang Yi didn't hesitate for a moment and shot them all in the head. He went forward and killed all the way. After more than 10 minutes, he killed 700 or 800 people. The depths of the island are full of dangers and traps. But for Zhang Yi, these things are meaningless. He flew in the air and ignored all attacks. The target is directly aimed at the extremely obvious landmark building on the island, a silver-white palace-style building, the lair of General Bao Cha. Chapter 795. You are the only one who calls yourself God? Zhang Yi rushed to the palace and found the regular army on the island. Unlike the bandits who appeared before, they were all wearing standard military uniforms and had more advanced weapons. Seeing Zhang Yi flying in the air, they were all dumbfounded. But there was still a captain who raised his gun and shouted, "Stop! Who are you? This is the territory of General Bao Cha of Manhwa Kingdom. Leave here immediately. Otherwise, our great General Bao Cha will punish you with divine punishment." Zhang Yi lowered his head and looked at them, and suddenly had some playful thoughts. "I was just robbed by your people. Shouldn't you Manhwa Kingdom give me an explanation?" The captain was stunned for a moment. His mouth was not very flexible, and he didn't know how to explain. "This is all a misunderstanding. You guys should leave quickly. We can pretend that this thing never happened." Zhang Yi sighed, "But I can't pretend that it never happened." He stood high in the air, waved his right hand, and hundreds of grenades fell from the alien space to the ground. The soldiers only saw a pile of black things falling down, and they didn't know what they were. It wasn't until they landed at their feet that their faces changed drastically. "Run!" Boom. 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 Hundreds of soldiers were killed on the spot. In the palace, General Bao Cha, who was wearing a white and luxurious military uniform and had a head full of silver hair, looked at the scene with a gloomy face. Where did this person come from? How dare he run wild in my country? He is really courting death. Several captains of the guards around him hurriedly said, "General, we can't let this man go on killing. He killed too many of our men. This will seriously affect our business." Another person also said, "Yes, without manpower, we will have to rob fewer ships in the future." General Bao Cha snorted coldly. "If there are fewer people, then we can go to other places to rob them back. However, it's time for me to take action. Let him know that the gods of Manhwa Kingdom cannot be offended." As soon as General Bao Cha finished speaking, he made preparations to run. He stepped on the ground with his right leather boot, and the floor exploded directly. Then he jumped up like an arrow from a string and rushed toward Zhang Yi. The subordinates around him looked at his figure with admiration. The general is a god. An undefeated god. Bang! General Bao Cha landed and blocked Zhang Yi, who was about to enter the park. He was in his 40s or 50s, with a murderous ruthlessness in his eyes. His strong body was so strong that his combat uniform could hardly cover his muscles. "Outsider, breaking into my palace and killing my men will cost you your life." Zhang Yi walked past him. The holy judge waved his hand lightly, and his head flew high from his neck, and then rolled on the snow. Everyone in the palace was stunned. The scene in front of them happened too suddenly. They originally thought that the god in their eyes, General Bao Cha, the #1 master of Manhwa Kingdom, would brutally kill Zhang Yi, the invader. But what is going on? Zhang Yi walked inside, and suddenly he saw a trembling soldier. "Where is your general?" Zhang Yi asked coldly. The soldier pointed at General Bao Cha, who was lying on the ground with his head and body separated. "The one you just killed is him." Zhang Yi was stunned for a moment, then scratched his head. "I was so good at killing that I forgot to ask. When he was in the Jiangnan region, he had fought with too many powerful aliens. So for a while, coming to such a small country was like a full-level boss coming to a novice village. He was still a little uncomfortable. Then you guys go to hell too?" Zhang Yi waved the holy judgment, and the unstable substance, like the dark flame, began to spread along the tip of the knife, turning into a black snake tens of meters long. He swung the knife lightly, and the snake directly pierced through the chest of a soldier, and then quickly swept towards the other soldiers. 1, 2, 3, 10, 20. All the soldiers in the entire courtyard were pierced within seconds, and huge holes appeared in their chests. The desperate wails sounded in the palace at this time. They came from the subordinates and wives of General Baocha. Compared with the ordinary gang members outside, they were well-dressed and even gorgeously dressed. General Baocha's harem was very large. It could be called a rainbow band, colorful, and everything. Zhang Yi flew up into the air with his sword in hand, looking down at the huge palace. It was obvious that there must be many secret rooms inside, which were used by General Baocha to escape. Zhang Yi was too lazy to search each room one by one. The dark matter on his sword became more turbulent, turning into a huge snake, and then chopped down at the castle. With a loud bang, the entire castle was split in half, and the ground tens of meters deep was exposed, revealing a huge pit. What caught my eye was a sea of white bones, and underneath was a huge pit of corpses. The bones inside were layered. It was stacked one layer upon another, and it was obvious that they had existed for who knows how many years. The building collapsed, revealing the warehouse. There was a food warehouse, which was filled with naked corpses. Vegetables and grains were no longer visible, and all you could see was white meat. There was also a warehouse for gold, silver, and jewelry, with gold bricks, famous watches, famous swords, and other treasures of General Baocha scattered all over the ground. They came from all over the world, and most of them were robbed by General Baocha. Zhang Yi thought about it and collected them all based on the principle of not wasting. The entire palace was swept clean by Zhang Yi, and nothing valuable was left. The woman who was robbed in the cabin said that this island was full of devils, and no one was innocent. Zhang Yi looked at the wives and concubines of General Baocha, who knelt on the ground and begged Zhang Yi to spare their lives, and even bluntly expressed their willingness to serve Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi looked at their gorgeous makeup and delicate faces and sighed. You all look like decent people, like celebrities. But you have the blood of many innocent people on your hands, right? A woman widened her eyes and shouted in Chinese, No, I didn't. I haven't killed anyone. She had realized that Zhang Yi was going to get rid of everyone. Zhang Yi smiled. He was not a judge, and he was not here to judge, so he didn't need to bother looking for any evidence. Living in hell, saying that you are not a ghost, isn't it fooling others? And most importantly, Zhang Yi exposed his ability here, which might expose his identity. So, no one can stay. Dark matter soared into the sky, swallowing them all in an instant, leaving no dust. Their bodies have been decomposed into the most primitive particle form. Zhang Yi slowly left the ruins with a knife. He was not in a hurry to leave, but patrolled over the entire city. He said that in this gangster's lair, this country of sin, except for those who were kidnapped, he didn't intend to leave a single person alive. Chapter 790, 6 Hypocrite. Zhang Yi stayed on the island of Manhwa for 2 hours and cleared out all the bandits he found. In addition to these people, he also found some kidnapped women. Like the women in the cabin, they were all tied up with chains and used as playthings of the bandits. As for the ships that were looted, the men had been killed for food. In the spirit of humanitarianism, Zhang Yi burned all the bodies he found so that they could rest in peace. However, Zhang Yi could not do more than leave some food for those women. According to their current mental state, even if they were released, it would be difficult for them to survive. However, it is not ruled out that there are a few who are determined. At this time, Zhu Yonk had already landed. She reported to Zhu Zheng about the incident. Zhu Zheng's opinion was that Zhang Yi would be in charge of all matters during the voyage. As long as there was no conflict with the big forces, Zhu Yonk should not interfere. But on the issue of dealing with the kidnapped women, Zhu Yonk insisted on giving her own opinion. We can't leave them here, or else they will still be waiting for death. Zhu Yonk looked at Zhang Yi firmly. We can take them to the ship and then take them back to Jiangnan district. Anyway, you have enough supplies, so it doesn't matter if you take a few more people. Zhang Yi widened his eyes and stared at Zhu Yonk in disbelief. He thought that the so-called saints only existed on the internet, but he didn't expect that the eldest lady of Blizzard City was also a saint. Do you know how troublesome it is for us to take these women? Zhang Yi frowned and asked back. Do you know what their identities are? If we let them on the ship, what if our mission is leaked? Zhu Yonk said to him seriously, no matter what the situation, human life is the most important. I can't tolerate myself giving up so many lives. They are all living people. She stepped forward and stared at Zhang Yi. You should know that if you give up on them, they will die. Zhang Yi recognized a fact from her eyes. This woman is serious. He suddenly thought that Zhu Yonk has been studying abroad, so her mind is full of Western things. Zhang Yi admitted that if he was one of those kidnapped people, he would like to meet a woman like Zhu Yonk. Unfortunately, he is not. And he is not a kind person, he is just an ordinary person, a selfish, ordinary person. Facing Zhu Yonk's questioning, Zhang Yi sneered in his heart. He slowly opened his mouth and asked back, Miss Zhu is right. Your nobility makes me admire you. But I want to ask, when the end of the world came, where did the 15 million people in Jinling City go now? Why are there less than 2 million people left, and a large number of elderly people who can't work were driven out and left to fend for themselves? Zhang Yi's eyes were full of teasing. At that time, where were you, kind Miss Zhu? Zhang Yi's words made Zhu Yonk blush. In Blizzard City, how could she have a say? But that's because of special reasons. Blizzard City doesn't have the conditions to feed so many people. It's different now. The supplies you have are enough for them to survive. Zhang Yi asked back, why? I do have a lot of supplies, but if I really have to share, I will share them with my compatriots. Not with a group of strangers from a foreign country. Miss Zhu, put away your cheap sympathy. This is the end of the world. Zhang Yi looked at the group of women wrapped in dirty blankets and sighed in his heart. He took out enough food for them to eat for a week from the alien space, then turned around and walked away. Zhu Yonk looked at the group of women fighting for food and looked at Zhang Yi helplessly. Without Zhang Yi's nod, she couldn't save these people, and the sailors wouldn't listen to her. She shouted at Zhang Yi angrily, but what's the point of doing this? Give them some food, and get that pitiful psychological comfort? You know they will die, you know. You're just deceiving yourself. Zhang Yi heard this and suddenly laughed. You're right, I left food for them just to make my conscience feel better. In fact, I don't care about them at all, because I'm not so philanthropic to take care of everyone. Hypocrisy, hypocrisy? Zhang Yi didn't care about Zhu Yonk's evaluation of him. He didn't think he was a great man, and he was even a little evil, so he didn't care about any evaluation. He pointed at Zhu Yonk and asked sarcastically, a gentleman judges by deeds, not by heart. At least I helped them. And Miss Zhu, the kind and great Miss Zhu, what did you do? Later, Zhu Yonk, in anger, left her 3 days of rations. And Zhang Yi really gave her face and told the kitchen that they didn't need to prepare meals for her in the next 3 days. Jin Feng continued to move forward. Zhu Yonk got angry with Zhang Yi and locked herself in the house and didn't come out. Zhang Yi didn't care about her. Anyway, she didn't do anything and she wouldn't starve to death if she starved for 3 days. Instead, Zhou Ke persuaded. Zhang Yi said, she is Zhu Zheng's niece after all. If you treat her like this, aren't you afraid that she will tell Zhu Zheng about you? Zhang Yi said disapprovingly, Zhu Zheng is not so foolish as to be unhappy with me because of this kind of thing. If I still need to look at the faces of those dignitaries now, wouldn't it be a waste of time to come to the end of the world? He smiled and reached out to touch Zhou Ke's fair and tender face. Don't worry, it's the people in Blizzard City who need me now, not me who needs them. Now, the reason why Zhu Zheng can sit firmly in the position of commander of the Jiangnan region is because Zhang Yi decided to rescue him at the beginning. Otherwise, he would have been killed by Gao Changkong long ago. Zhou Ke smiled and said, I think it's better to tell Zhu Zheng that some things can be made clear. Even if he doesn't say it now, if he has a knot in his heart, it may be troublesome in the future. Zhang Yi thought about it, listened to Zhou Ke's words, and took out the communicator to contact Zhu Zheng. Far above the ocean, the signal is very poor. Fortunately, when they set out, they specially received a set of communication equipment from the headquarters, and there was a base station on the Jinfeng. The most advanced Warwick base station in the world is used, so there is no need to worry about the signal. Zhu Zheng received Zhang Yi's report and said with a smile, I am sorry to trouble you. My niece is not a bad person by nature. She is just inexperienced and does not have a deep understanding of the cruel reality. I asked you to go with me because I want you to teach her a good lesson. You don't have to worry about it. Just do it according to your ideas. With Zhu Zheng's words, the last trace of worry in Zhang Yi's heart disappeared. He is now doing things according to old Zhu's wishes. If Zhu Yonk is naughty again, he can slap her on the butt with his palm as big as a palm leaf fan at any time. Children who are disobedient should be spanked. Chapter 797 Little Pearl Can't Do It, 1/2. Miss Zhu Yonk, a great good man, a kind mother, and a woman with a heart for the world, decided to forgive Zhang Yi's mistake after enduring hunger for a whole day. She sat on the bed with her knees hugged, and after hesitating for a long time, she sent a message to Zhang Yi. We don't need to argue like children. How about reconciliation? Zhang Yi was eating a delicious beef cheeseburger at the time and took a bite of the steaming burger, his mouth full of juice. Seeing the message coming, Zhang Yi picked up the phone, just glanced at it, and threw it back on the table. After a while, Zhu Yonk's message came again. If you don't say anything, I will take it as your consent. I'm a little hungry. Can you give me something to eat? Zhang Yi smiled and almost spit out the bread in his mouth. He looked at the phone jokingly and sent a voice message. The food is for you. Didn't you give it away? Zhu Yonk saw Zhang Yi's message. His eyes widened angrily, threw the phone on the bed, and then lay on the bed with his hands on his stomach. Zhou Kur said to Zhang Yi, you really won't let her eat? If she starves for 3 days, I'm afraid she will collapse. Zhang Yi said lightly, people who have never endured hunger have no idea of the preciousness of food. Can't stand being hungry for just 1 day? Then, why does she not care about the food in my hand? This is the first lesson for her. Zhou Kuder smiled helplessly. If she really doesn't eat anything, she will have a stomach disease. Just let her suffer a little. It won't be a long time since we set out. I won't turn against her, right? Zhang Yi thought about it and thought that what Zhou Kuder said made some sense. But necessary punishment is indispensable. Take out a bag of whole wheat bread from the alien space and take out a bag of boiled chicken breasts. That's right, it's a standard weight loss meal. Send these things to her in 2 hours. Zhou Kuder didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It takes great courage to eat these things. Zhou Kuder sent these foods to Zhu Yonk. At first, Zhu Yonk was quite happy, thinking that Zhang Yi was reluctant to let her starve. But when she saw that what was delivered was whole wheat bread and boiled chicken breast, her face turned green. The main feature of the weight loss meal is that it tastes bad. Especially the whole wheat bread. Even if you eat it with water, it will make your throat hurt. Zhang Yi asked me to eat this? Zhu Yonk asked in disbelief. Zhou Kuder smiled and said, isn't this good? It's very healthy to eat. Seeing Zhu Yonk's angry and aggrieved face, the little pearls in the corners of her eyes were about to fall. Zhou Kuder said, Miss Zhu, let me say something unnecessary. Zhang Yi's personality is like this. He never spoils anyone. So, when you get along with him in the future, you'd better not disobey him too much. Zhu Yonk bit her lip and was about to cry. Then, he can't bully me. Seeing that she was about to cry, Zhou Kuder hurriedly comforted her. Don't be too sad. This matter will be over in a few days. But don't cry. When Zhu Yonk heard this, she immediately raised her head and laughed twice. Don't worry, the little pearl won't be sick at all. Zhou Kuder laughed secretly in her heart and turned to leave. After she left, Zhu Yonk closed the door and the little pearl fell from the corner of her eye. Woo woo. When Lao Tian saw Zhu Yonk passing by, he hurried over with a smile and greeted her. Miss Zhu, where are you going? Zhu Yonk's eyes quietly looked into the house and vaguely saw that the table was full of food. Zhang Yi was never stingy with the people around him, especially when he was on a mission. He would let his subordinates eat well so that they would work harder. Your food is good. Zhu Yonk pretended to be nonchalant because she was afraid that Lao Tian would see her greed, so she turned her head to the side lightly. Lao Tian laughed and said, That's right. Mr. Zhang is so good to us. When we were in Tianhai City, we couldn't eat these foods once a month. Now we have big fish and meat every day. So delicious. At this point, He suddenly remembered that Zhu Yonk had nothing to eat these days. He couldn't help but say, "Miss Zhu, you haven't eaten yet? If you don't mind, come and eat with us?" Zhu Yonk almost nodded in agreement. But she couldn't do that, because if she did, Zhang Yi would definitely laugh at her for this matter for the rest of her life. "Haha, I don't eat it. Zhang Yi has sent me food. You don't think you dare to starve me?" Zhu Yonk said stubbornly. Lao Tian nodded. "Yes, you were sent by the district after all. How can Mr. Zhang treat you badly?" Zhu Yonk couldn't help asking, "What did you eat today?" Lao Tian smiled and said, "Oh, just some roast chicken, barbecued meat, grilled fish, and mashed potatoes." Zhu Yonk's heart was filled with tears. Damn Zhang Yi, the food he gave them was better than what he gave her. "Oh, I ate these things too." Zhu Yonk turned his head away stubbornly and left here quickly. The Jin foam continued to sail on the sea, and before he knew it, 26 days had passed. According to the original plan, it would take 28 days to reach the destination, Yanlu Island. But after actually going out to sea, he found that the situation was much worse than he had imagined. First of all, in order to avoid dangerous deep-sea areas along the way, he had to take a detour. And on the way, he would encounter forces from other regions. Pirates and even the navies of some countries would come into contact. In addition, there would often be blizzards on the sea, which further hindered the speed of travel. This was the first time in Zhang Yi's life that he had gone on a long voyage. On several blizzard nights, the wind was strong, and the storm outside was roaring like a monster, blowing the icebreaker up and down. That feeling was really soul-stirring. Zhou Kud huddled in his arms, hugging his body tightly and not daring to let go. Zhang Yi sighed at the power of nature in his heart, while stroking her smooth back and comforting her. "It's okay, there won't be any danger. I'm here, everything is fine." Zhang Yi's heart was also a little pounding, but that was just an instinctive reaction to his first time out to sea. In fact, even if he encountered danger, with his ability, he could bring Zhou Kud and others to survive. After the snowstorm, they continued to move forward, and a few days later, they met uninvited guests again. Chapter 798 Marley Navy, Ad 1. On this morning, the sun shone through the clouds onto the sea. The white sunlight looked cold and did not bring much warmth. Even in mid-July, and they had come to the tropical sea, the temperature was still very low, more than 20 degrees below zero. But this temperature is like heaven compared to the north. At least, the survival rate of humans in this environment is greatly improved. After a night of blizzard, Zhang Yi and his team could not help but come to the deck, looking at the calming ice sea, with deep emotion in their hearts. However, at this moment, a beep sound of a whistle came from their ears. At the end of the endless sea level, a black was slowly approaching. Old Tian hurried over and said to Zhang Yi, "There are warships coming." "They are the Navy of Marley." Zhang Yi asked curiously, "Isn't this the high seas?" Old Tian smiled bitterly and said, "You should also know that the sea is almost the same as the land now. Many of the previous rules are gone now. Due to the shortage of materials, many small countries have become gangster countries. The navy of some countries also works part-time as pirates. Except for world powers like our Huashu or Colombia, there are many other countries like this." Zhang Yi narrowed his eyes slowly. Marley is also a large country in the ocean area. Before the other party expresses hostility, Zhang Yi cannot take action directly. "What are they going to do?" Zhang Yi asked. Old Tian said, "They propose to board the ship for inspection." "Mr. Zhang, what should we do?" Old Tian's heart was also pounding. The warships of Marley are not a joke. They are equipped with advanced weapons. Even if the Jin Feng has heavy armor, it can't stop the warship's artillery and torpedoes. Zhang Yi narrowed his eyes and thought about countermeasures. Zhu Yonk said, "We can communicate with them. If they know that we are a ship from Huashu country, they will not dare to embarrass us." Zhang Yi glanced at her and said, "If we bring out the name of Jiangnan District and say that we are expatriates from Blizzard City, they may be afraid. But are you sure you want to expose our identities?" Zhu Yonk didn't know what to say at the time. They were carrying out a secret mission and must not expose their identities. Even if it is a civilian ship, maybe. Zhu Yang's voice became smaller and smaller. She saw a lot of fighting and killing along the way, and her mentality slowly changed. In the end times, human life is cheaper than grass. If they are really civilian ships, no one will care even if something happens. Lao Tian asked, "What do you mean?" Zhang Yi stood up from the railing lightly. "Let them come over, and then act according to the situation. It depends on what the other party is going to do. Zhang Yi doesn't cause trouble, nor is he afraid of trouble. Strength is his greatest asset." Lao Tian received Zhang Yi's instructions and immediately asked the staff to respond to the other party's boarding inspection information. Zhou Kur was next to Zhang Yi. Her small hand was held by his big hand, and the nervousness in her heart disappeared at once. She looked up at his calm profile, and a steady smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. Zhu Yang was actually very nervous in her heart. This was the first time she had seen such a situation in her life. If she could not reveal her identity, she would just be a civilian. It was impossible not to be nervous when she was a civilian and had to face the inspection of the navy of another country on the sea. She also wanted to get close to Zhang Yi to get a sense of security. But the appearance of Zhang Yi and Zhou Kuder made her feel particularly redundant. Not long after, a gray warship came to the side of the Jinfeng. This warship was not big, and its size was slightly larger than the Jinfeng. It was full of soldiers who were tightly wrapped in white combat uniforms and holding weapons in their hands. Zhang Yi's eyes never left them. Once they made any abnormal movements, Zhang Yi would immediately open the dimensional door to resist the opponent's attack. On the warship of Marley, a man who looked like an officer stood up. His combat uniform was obviously different from that of ordinary soldiers, and it was easy to distinguish. He waved over here, and then the two ships slowly approached each other. The soldiers set up the wooden planks, and then passed along the planks one after another, and came to the deck of the Jinfeng. Zhu Yang explained to them, "We are from Huashu country. This is just an ordinary civilian ship. We definitely don't carry any prohibited items." The Navy of Marley ignored her words. Instead, a soldier came directly over, pushed Zhu Yang to the ground, and pointed the barrel of the gun in his hand directly at her head. "I asked you to talk, and you were talking. Now, shut up." The black muzzle of the gun pointed at Zhu Yang's head, and she could even see the cold spiral inside. In this life, she has never had a gun pointed at her head. The young lady was shocked and sat on the ground in a daze, not daring to move. Zhang Yi watched this scene silently, but had no intention of taking action, but his eyes observed the soldier's fingers. He only used the gun to scare Zhu Yang, and his finger was not on the trigger. "Now, carry your guns obediently. Stand still and accept our inspection." The soldier shook the gun in his hand and shouted. Other soldiers had already rushed into the cabin and began to search. Zhang Yi remained calm. There were not many supplies on the ship. Zhang Yi had anticipated this situation, so there were only a small amount of supplies in the cabin, enough for a week. Zhu Yang was frightened and her face turned pale. She looked at Zhang Yi for help, but saw that Zhang Yi's face was calm. Obviously, Zhang Yi did not want to reveal his identity. The little pearls in the corners of Zhu Yang's eyes fell down. Zhang Yi didn't care about her at all. She could only stand up honestly and stand next to Zhou Kur. A soldier took a gun and asked them to hand over their weapons. Zhang Yi secretly winked at them, and everyone put their guns on the floor. Because of their cooperation, the Marleyan Navy did not do more rude actions. The officer-like man glanced at Zhang Yi and others and asked, "Who is the captain among you?" Zhang Yi replied, "Sir, I am the captain of this ship." The Marley officer was called Obengius. He stared at Zhang Yi's face and asked coldly, "Why did the people of Huashu come to the ocean thousands of kilometers away? Tell me, what is your purpose?" Zhang Yi swallowed his saliva and stuttered in fear. I received a distress signal from my sister. She was trapped on an island. I came to save her." "Save her? What a touching brother," Obengius said with a sneer, obviously not believing Zhang Yi's words. There were constant noises in the cabin. These soldiers were particularly rude when they searched for things. They were unwilling to let go of anything. Zhang Yi couldn't help but say, "Sir, we don't have much supplies on the ship. Can you leave us some food?" Chapter 799, Go All Out, added for Sta. Obenkius ignored Zhang Yi's words. After a while, the soldiers brought out a lot of things from the cabin. There were all kinds of canned food, firearms, and weapons, and a lot of them were displayed. Seeing this, Obenkius said to his adjutant, "Didn't you find anything else suspicious?" The adjutant replied, "I checked it. It's just an ordinary civilian ship. There's nothing suspicious." Obenkius nodded. "Take them. Let's go back." This sentence was said in front of everyone, and Zhang Yi heard it clearly. His eyes narrowed slowly. "Sir, we still have something to do." "Shut up." A soldier pointed a gun directly at Zhang Yi's head. "You are not qualified to speak now. Your ship has been requisitioned by the Marley Navy, and you now have an extremely glorious opportunity to serve the Marley Navy." "Thank God." Zhang Yi sighed, and Lao Tian and others looked at the soldiers in front of them and felt sorry for them. "Isn't it good to be alive? Do you have to die?" "In my life, what I hate most is someone pointing a gun at my head." Space accelerated 30 times. Zhang Yi's figure suddenly disappeared in front of the Marleyan Navy. A black light flashed in the air, like a long black snake appearing across the sky. A moment later, more than a dozen Navy officers were cut in half with their guns. Obenius's hair stood on end, and he realized that the crisis of death was approaching. He raised his arms and turned into a huge crystal shield in front of him. However, all his desperate struggles were in vain. With just one knife, he was no different from an ordinary soldier and was killed instantly. 2 seconds. All the Marleyan Navy on the deck of the Gene Foam were killed. The Marleyan Navy on the warship realized that something was wrong and was about to open fire. And Zhang Yi had already jumped onto the deck of the warship. How terrible is it for a top-level Delta-level alien to attack with all his strength? For ordinary people and low-level aliens, he is a god. Zhang Yi did not hold back at all and used all his strength to kill the Marleyan Navy in front of him. This operation must be kept secret. If they are delayed for a second, the other party may send the information about them to the Marley Navy headquarters. At that time, their action plan will be completely exposed. Zhang Yi cannot bear this risk. So, at the beginning, he planned to send some supplies to calm things down. Unfortunately, this group of Marley Navy was too greedy, so they could only die. After Zhang Yi killed the soldiers on the deck in seconds, he directly slashed out with a backhanded knife. Voila! The bulletproof glass and heavy armor of the command room were directly chopped into pieces like paper. The soldiers inside were also destroyed, and their bodies and the command room were split in half. "Quick, control their command desk," Zhang Yi shouted to Lao Tian and others. Then he held the handle of the Holy Inquisition with his backhand and stabbed it under the deck. The dark matter rushed like a flame, directly destroying the power device under the deck, and then turned into a torrent and rushed towards every room. Those Marleyan soldiers were engulfed by dark matter. No matter what kind of material their combat uniforms were made of, they were all submerged in the first place and then decomposed into particles. Zhang Yi jumped from the edge of the knife and harvested the survivors. Lao Tian also quickly led people to jump onto the warship and began to control the command desk. The counterattack was completed in an instant. From Zhang Yi's attack to Lao Tian and others boarding the ship, it took less than half a minute. A few dozen seconds later, Zhang Yi killed everyone on the warship. The killing was carried out very quickly. Zhang Yi gasped for breath and was actually a little excited in his heart. It was not because of fear, but because he was worried that the killing was not fast enough and the information here would be sent out. In that case, their mission might be exposed. He returned to the deck with a knife. The roof of the command room had been cut off, revealing all the electronic equipment in the cold wind. "How is it? Have they sent any information about us?" Zhang Yi asked. Of course, there must be engineers among the sailors. After checking, he said, "Mr. Zhang, they didn't have time to send them out. But the ship has suffered great damage now, and it won't be long before the Marleyan Navy will find the problem. Can you delay it for a while?" "The longer the better," the sailor said. "At most 2 hours. they will find something wrong. And with their technical means, they will definitely find our location. By then, we may be surrounded by the Marleyan Navy, which will be very troublesome. Zhang Yi bit his finger, then immediately returned to the Jin phone and used the communicator to contact Yang Xinxin, who is far away in Tianhai City. Brother, Xinxin misses you so much. Yang Xinxin's cute face appeared on the screen. Zhang Yi smiled. Although he was at sea, he would video chat with his family every few days. Xinxin, I have a very troublesome problem now. Can you give me some advice? Zhang Yi explained the situation to Yang.
Xinxin explained.
Hearing this, Yang Xinxin said while eating a lollipop, "This problem is easy to solve. It's easy to deal with if their communication device is in your hands. Brother, connect the device to Xinxin's computer, and I can help you forge their information to communicate with the Marley Navy. In this way, they will need at least 30 hours to find out that something is wrong." Yang Xinxin sat in the control room of the shelter, with dozens of huge screens in front of her. Her white and tender hands quickly tapped on the keyboard. Marley can only be regarded as a small country of the middle class. Their management system must be chaotic now. I will find an excuse to try to conceal it. Zhang Yi thought of their attempt to rob the Jin phone and said, "Just say that they encountered a Japanese ship and planned to rob the supplies on it. It would be even better if they could divert the trouble to the east." Okay, then follow your script, brother. Zhang Yi took action directly and plugged a signal receiver into the console of the warship. Yang Xinxin quickly hacked into its system, then sent a message to the Marley military, indicating that the ship they encountered was not from Huashu, but belonged to a group of Japanese Ronin. Now they are hunting. It's the end of the world, and a lot of intelligence cannot be judged, so these words are not easy to be exposed. After that, Yang Xinxin will keep in touch with Marley regularly to delay time. After this period of time, Zhang Yi and his team have long sailed away from the surrounding areas of Marley. Even if the other party wants to find someone, they will give up because of insufficient intelligence and the high cost of ocean voyage. Yang Xinxin controls the warship and sends the wrong signal to the Marley military. Zhang Yi and others return to the Jin phone. Old Tian, go full speed and leave the sea area as soon as possible. Zhang Yi ordered. Yes, Mr. Zhang. Old Tian did not dare to neglect and hurriedly asked people to go full speed. However, the faces of the crew were full of excitement. Seeing that their leader was so powerful, even the navy of a country was slaughtered by him casually, and they couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in their hearts. Everyone worked harder and returned to their posts. At this time, Zhang Yi noticed that Zhou Kur was treating Zhu Yonk. The soldier just pushed her and broke her elbow. In cold seasons, people's bodies are more fragile and more prone to injuries. In addition, Zhu Yonk is a delicate lady, so it is not surprising. Okay, it's okay. Zhou Kur simply used the ability of doctor to heal her injuries. But the feeling of pain will not disappear so quickly. Zhu Yonk's eyes were red with grievance, looking at Zhang Yi with a resentful look. Why didn't you take action when they bullied me? She felt very unbalanced. If Zhang Yi had rescued her earlier, she would not be in trouble. When did she bully even a soldier? If you said less at the time, wouldn't it be okay? Zhang Yi just replied lightly. Chapter 800, Talking at Cross Purposes. Zhang Yi's attitude made Zhu Yonk very sad. The Marley soldier just pointed a gun at her head. She almost died. You don't care about me at all. She shouted at Zhang Yi angrily. You have been treating me badly since the first time we met. Tell me, what did I do to offend you? I've been trying very hard to build a good relationship with you. What else do you want me to do? Zhang Yi was silent. Why does it sound like he is to blame? From the beginning to the end, wasn't it Zhu Yonk herself who had been arrogant to him? What's more, they were just working partners, and Zhang Yi had no obligation to please her. I promised Zhu Shuai that I would only guarantee your life. But this mission is very important, and I don't like to have a burden around me. If you could be more sensible, I wouldn't treat you like this. Zhang Yi frowned and looked at her like a child. Control your temper. The things you are proud of are useless in this world. Zhu Yonk was hit hard, but she was unwilling to admit it. How could she do something wrong? The one who was wrong was obviously the cold and indifferent man who didn't know how to cherish women. You're talking nonsense. You just remembered it because I told you not to take off your gloves when shaking hands. You are looking for revenge on me. She shouted loudly. Zhang Yi said without hesitation. Fuck, I didn't expect you to find out all this. You are really smart. I still haven't forgiven you because of that incident. Zhu Yonk was stunned for a moment. She was just venting her emotions, and Zhang Yi really admitted it? Zhang Yi smiled and pointed at his nose. You should learn more about it. Zhang Yi, am a well-known petty person who will take revenge for the slightest grievance. Didn't expect it? He slowly opened his eyes, and a hint of impatient coldness flashed across his eyes. So from now on, don't bother me again. He glanced at the huge ice sea inadvertently. In a place like this, any accident is possible. He had just killed someone, and the bloody smell on his body was still very strong. This murderous aura immediately made Zhu Yonk's neck start to feel cold. Her face turned pale. She staggered back a few steps and then ran back to the cabin in a panic. The annoying guy finally left. Zhang Yi exhaled. Now the world is quiet. Seeing this, Zhou Kur said with some concern, She is Zhu Zheng's niece after all. It's not good to talk to her like this, right? It's not bad. Zhang Yi leaned against the railing. The gene phone was moving at full speed, and the cold wind blew over his body. Sorry, I can't feel any coolness, because he was wearing the most advanced cold-proof clothing. I'm not a person with high emotional intelligence, and I have nothing to do with being smooth and getting along with everyone. Zhang Yi smiled playfully. Zhou Kur looked at his expression and recalled for no reason half a year ago, when she just met Zhang Yi. When the end of the world came, he didn't give anyone any favors at that time and lived very freely. And now, Zhang Yi is still the same Zhang Yi. She smiled gently and said, Sometimes I often think, if only I could be as carefree as you. That's easy. As long as you have no morals, you won't be morally kidnapped by others. Live a heartless life and your life will become easy. In the room, after Zhu Yonk returned, the first thing she thought of was to complain to Zhu Zheng. She was like a little girl who was bullied in school, or a girl who was not bullied but felt wronged, and she reported to the counselor. Generally speaking, this is a shortcut to graduate school, and Zhu Yonk is well aware of this. The communicator connected to Zhu Zheng's office. Zhu Zheng's majestic face appeared behind the desk. Yuk, what happened? Zhu Yonk sniffed. Uncle, I almost died just now. She told Zhu Zheng what she had just experienced with grievance. I thought Zhu Zheng would teach Zhang Yi a lesson after listening. But after listening to him, Zhu Zheng just smiled and said, Don't worry, these are all minor issues. Marley doesn't need to take them seriously. Our Huashu country's ships can go wherever they want. He thought Zhu Yonk was crying because he was bullied by Marley soldiers. Zhu Yonk said dissatisfiedly, Uncle, although Marley soldiers are hateful, Zhang Yi's attitude towards me is also very bad. I was pushed down by them, and he pointed a gun at me. But Zhang Yi didn't help me. Zhu Zheng asked in surprise, Didn't Zhang Yi kill all the Marley soldiers? Isn't this considered standing up for you? Zhu Yonk was speechless for a moment. That's right, but he was quite indifferent at the time. Zhu Zheng said with a smile, Zhang Yi is a person with a cold face and a warm heart. He may seem to care about nothing, but in fact, the young man is very enthusiastic. He is like a pile of dry firewood. You need first use your own flame to ignite him, and then you can heat it up. Dry wood and ignite a raging fire, you know? Yuk, Zhang Yi is very important to me and the entire Jiangnan region. You must build a good relationship with him and take him down. Zhu Yonk was speechless. She even felt that Zhang Yi's position in Zhu Zheng's mind was more important than her. Zhu Yonk had a lot of complaints in her heart but couldn't say them. She was not stupid and knew that continuing to complain about Zhang Yi would only make Zhu Zheng unhappy. But after ending the call, she couldn't help but feel irritated. Zhang Yi, you are really blind. How can you be so heartless to a woman like me who is both beautiful and thoughtful? Zhu Yonk complained angrily. She also wanted to get closer to Zhang Yi. However, Zhang Yi brought Zhou Qi with him on the road, and the two of them were together wherever they went, leaving her no chance to squeeze in. But with Zhou Qi around, her charm would immediately be greatly reduced. The Jin phone continued to move southeast. During the meal, Zhu Yonk took the initiative to find Zhang Yi. This time her attitude became much better. I have talked to my uncle about the Marleyan Navy. My uncle told you not to worry and just continue to perform your mission. If there are any problems, the region will handle them properly for you. Zhang Yi looked at her gentle appearance and couldn't help but sneered. I thought you would only go to your uncle to complain about me. Zhu Yonk was anxious all of a sudden. You. How can you slander someone's innocence for no reason? Zhang Yi raised his eyebrows. In other words, I guessed right? The truth is the sharpest knife. Zhu Yonk took a deep breath. Okay, I admit that I was a little prejudiced against you in the past. I'll try to listen to you more in the future, okay? I also hope you can treat me better. You know, I'm not an unreasonable woman, and I can give you a lot of help in the future. She was hinting to Zhang Yi that if he was with her, he would have the opportunity to gain more power and improve his status in the Jiangnan region in the future. Zhang Yi paused for a moment while eating and then did not comment on Zhu Yonk's words. They were talking at cross purposes. Thanks for staying tuned. We'll upload MRE soon. Please subscribe if not already.